My name is Betsy. Here's my living situation as it is currently unique. Actually, I am currently living alone with my eldest son's wife, Candice. I'm sure a lot of people must be wondering where my first son is and why I only live with his wife, Candice. It has a sad history behind this. One day my oldest son, Matt, was killed in a traffic accident. This tragic event caused a lot of sadness in our family. I never envisaged living together with my firstborn, but that is where life has taken me. But 6 months ago, my son Matt and his wife Candice turned up at my door with a lot of bags. They responded, "Henceforth we shall live here together." I thanked God and my mother, for he was finally in my home. I had already lost my husband around this time and was living a peaceful yet lonely life. I didn't want to live with my boys. For Matt, my eldest, and Greg, our second son, both married the women they loved to create happy homes. I figured there was no cause for them to stick with me. I prefer to live at my own pace. Therefore, living alone was the most suitable lifestyle for me. However, my eldest son and his wife moved into my house without considering my thoughts or feelings. I couldn't hide my confusion. Why did you come here? Both of you were living comfortably in a downtown high-rise apartment, weren't you? I asked. Candice seemed displeased with the question and puffed out her cheeks. Matt scratched his head and said, "Well, the truth is we had a dispute with our neighbor. No matter what we did, they would get angry over the sound of the vacuum cleaner or the volume of the music. We were criticized a lot by our fussy neighbor, so we thought if we're going to complain about this much, we might as well move out." Matt often boasted big words like, "I can do this," but then he'd fail and end up being scolded or criticized. He's had many such experiences. Probably this time, too, he ended up having to move out after a quarrel. So Candice, who had to leave the high-rise apartment because of her husband, must have been angry. "Is that the reason for the move?" I asked. "That's right. In the end, we had to leave the high-rise apartment. We didn't have a new place to live, so we decided to stay here for a while," he replied. I was at a loss with Matt's nonchalant explanation. Still, it was troubling to have them suddenly come to my family home and declare that we would live together. I hadn't prepared living space for Matt and Candice, and since I hadn't planned for communal living, my house was full of things necessary for my work. Don't enter the workspace I'd use daily and my bedroom. There's an empty room on the second floor. Use that, I told them. Candice asked, dissatisfied, "But the room on the first floor is the largest, right? Why are you using that room?" "Sorry, I need it for work," I explained. "You work, Mother?" Candice seemed puzzled. Regardless of their demands, I had no intention of opening up my workspace to others, so I had them go upstairs. At that time, I thought they would soon find a new house and move out. But surprisingly, they stayed in my house for quite a long time. "Hey, Matt, are you looking for a new place?" I casually asked. Matt replied lightly, "You know." I realized something. "We'll have to pay rent if we find a new place. Living at home is free, right?" I was shocked. Free rent? At that time, I thought Matt and Candice would leave soon, so I hadn't thought about receiving rent or living expenses. However, if they continued living here without paying rent, it would be a problem for me. Not receiving rent or living expenses, I suggested, then please pay for the living expenses. Matt frowned and protested. "What? Why? We're at home, so we don't need to pay money, right?" Given the situation, it was likely that Matt would refuse to pay, so I had to make it clear to him. "Listen, you and Candice are currently not paying me anything, right? But when the two of you live here, there are expenses for both of your food and other costs. I won't ask for rent, but at least you need to pay that much," I said firmly. Then, as if he didn't want to hear my admonition any further, he covered his ears and said, All right, all right. We should pay, right? And agreed to pay $300 per person each month. However, even a total of $600 was actually not enough. Matt and Candice seemed to think of me as some kind of household robot who does everything for them. Mom, I'd like to have meat and potatoes today. Could you make it quickly? Matt would ask several times a week. Candice also started to complain, Mother, why aren't my clothes washed? I was planning to wear that outfit today. Despite having discussed my work at home when they arrived, Candice seemed to have no understanding of my situation. Hey, Candice, I have work too, so I'd like you to handle your own household chores. I told her, but she laughed it off, saying, You're always at home, so you should be fine with that. I had no intention of making excessive demands on Matt and Candice, so I was truly baffled by this situation. Gradually, I also started to struggle financially. At first, Matt said, Okay, I'll pay, but then began to grumble about the promised living expenses of $600, saying, Isn't it unnecessary? Candice too seemed to lack gratitude for our shared living arrangement and didn't lift a finger to help with household chores. Perhaps I was being taken advantage of by them. If so, I thought it was best to express my opinion firmly when Matt and Candice were together. However, with both of them busy with work, it was hard to find a moment to talk. I live a healthy lifestyle of sleeping and waking up early, and their lifestyle of staying up late and rushing out in the morning didn't suit me. While searching for an opportunity to have a discussion, a shocking event occurred. Unbelievably, Matt passed away in a traffic accident. He dozed off at the wheel late at night and crashed into a wall. Fortunately, no one else was affected, but I never imagined losing my son in such a way. At the news of this tragedy, my younger son Greg and his wife, Hannah, came to comfort me. However, Matt's wife Candice looked displeased throughout the funeral and didn't seem to mourn. She spent the entire time stroking her belly. And so my life with just Candice began. This house originally belonged to me, so there was no necessity to keep Candice here after Matt's death. But I chose not to evict a woman who had lost her spouse. I felt I should watch over Candice until she recovered from the shock of losing her husband. I encouraged her to be active and suggested, I'd like to try your cooking, Candice, hoping she'd help with household chores. Then she told me something unexpected. I can't do that because I am pregnant. I couldn't hide my surprise. With Matt gone, the revelation of her pregnancy meant she would now become a single mother raising a child alone. Considering her isolation, I became even more lenient with her. I did the household chores for her and said nothing, even though she stopped contributing financially after Matt's death. Despite all my efforts and time spent for her, she one day suddenly said something I could never have imagined. I can't take it anymore. I can't endure this any longer, she told me, making me worry that I had somehow made her uncomfortable. Confused, I calmly asked her what happened. Then she made an unexpected demand. How long do you intend to stay in my house? Can you leave soon? I was shocked and bewildered by her sudden request. This property is clearly mine, not hers. She had no right to ask me to leave, yet she was trying to evict me from my own house as if it was natural. Wait a minute, Candice. Why should I have to leave this house? I asked her, surprised yet firm in my response. However, her answer was even more shocking. Why? Because it's a mistake for you to live here. Ever since Matt was alive, I felt your presence was a nuisance, and now that Matt is gone, I can't stand you continuing to squat in this house, she declared. I struggled to understand why she thought the house belonged to her. Her words telling me to leave were incredibly rude, and given that this house is my property, it was unacceptable for her to say I was squatting. Despite this, she seemed convinced that her position was justified and declared, If you don't leave this house within a week, I will dispose of all the items in the room you are using. I planned to start cleaning up the largest room on the first floor first. In response to her declaration, I frantically shook my head. Please remember that room, as I've mentioned before, is my workspace. It contains various tools I use daily and countless creations I made with love. Please don't enter that room, I implored her. But red-faced with anger, she shouted, "Be quiet. I manage this house, so strangers like you should leave immediately." At that moment, I was unable to hide my confusion and agitation. I asked her, "Stranger." She intensified her stance, saying, "Yes, that's right. From now on, I'll treat you as a stranger. Living with someone who's not family is unthinkable, so please leave this house," and pointed toward the house's entrance. After being told so much, I lost my words. Counter-arguing seemed pointless and absurd. I couldn't understand what she was misconceiving, but I was astounded by her audacity and the brazen act of trying to evict the homeowner. So, let's consider this a severance. "Take care," I said with a smile, making a firm decision in my heart. Handling all the housework and not receiving any living expenses while she continued to live arrogantly in my house was unbearable. Frankly, I had started to doubt her claimed pregnancy. The timeline of her supposed pregnancy coincided with the period Matt was away on a long business trip, making their meeting unlikely. Additionally, I sensed some ulterior motive behind Candice's sudden change in behavior. With this conviction, I began to plan my course of action. As a first step, I decided to transfer the ownership of this house, which I had no intention of living in alone, from my name to my younger son Greg's name. Originally, I had planned to pass this house to either Matt or Greg, but with Matt no longer in this world, I had no intention of giving it to Candice. After explaining Candice's behavior to Greg, I revealed my plan to transfer the house to him and his wife. They seemed delighted to accept the house, as they had been hoping to live in a single-family home. The cleaning costs for the house were decided to be borne by them, as it was cheaper than building a new house. Thus, the task of evicting Candice, who behaved as if she was the rightful owner and squatted in the house, was entrusted to Greg and his wife. During this critical plan's execution, I carefully sorted my personal belongings and various work tools, preparing for my new life. Unaware of this, Candice said mockingly, "It's really disgraceful to cling to the house of a son who took care of you even after he's no longer here. Oh, to become so miserable with age, I must be careful too." However, the one who might face a tragic situation was actually Candice herself, not me. I simply wished she wouldn't impede my move if she wanted me to leave the house quickly. Ignoring her words, Candice eventually lost interest and returned to her room. Recently, Candice's outings had increased, and during her absences, I swiftly completed moving to my new home. A week later, Greg and his wife began to take concrete action to intervene. Greg, who works in civil engineering, had colleagues who offered to help at his request. On the designated day, several muscular and strong men entered the house where Candice was living. I heard that she was taken aback and froze on the spot, despite her loud protests of, "This is my house." "Leave immediately." Greg calmly responded, "Candice, I am now the official owner of this property. It's not yours, nor was it ever owned by your husband, my brother." He then presented the official documents proving the house was now in his name. Confronted with this fact, Candice was left speechless and stunned. Following Candice's shock, her belongings were quickly packed, making her ready to move to a new residence at any time. Greg then quietly urged her, "Please feel free to move to a place of your liking." Candice, outraged, exclaimed, "How cruel of you to drive me out of the house," and seemed intent on complaining to her parents about the situation. However, Greg, with a cold gaze, countered, "Wasn't my mom the owner of this house, and didn't you drive her out? Now you find yourself in a similar situation. Why do you think it's unfair?" Candice was at a loss for words and couldn't respond to his question. Consequently, she was forced to leave the house. Greg's calm yet resolute demeanor made her confront the reality of the consequences of her actions. She probably couldn't argue when the same behavior she initiated was directed at her. Additionally, even if she tried to retort, it was impossible for Greg to overlook the fact that she had mercilessly evicted his own mother from the house. Greg, unlike Matt, who valued duty and compassion, seemed angry about Candace's actions towards me. So Candice, who claimed to be pregnant, was driven out of the house. Her options were limited. As expected, she returned to her parents' home seeking their support. Though I don't know the specifics, her parents, upon hearing that their daughter was treated harshly and evicted, were furious and called me. "How could you drive out our daughter? She has just lost her husband and is pregnant." They accused me. Calmly, I replied, "Candice herself claimed this house was hers and demanded that I leave. Therefore, I left and transferred the ownership to my younger son Greg since I couldn't live there." Confused, Candice's father said, "What do you mean the ownership has changed?" Candice might have claimed the house's ownership, but I couldn't understand why someone who contributed nothing to the household finances would be the owner. I arranged to meet her parents at a cafe to help them understand Candice's past actions and words. To prevent any misunderstandings, I had recorded Matt and Candace's everyday conversations and also documented daily household activities, including recordings. These recordings were from a monitoring camera installed by Greg, concerned for my safety. I told her parents, Candice just moved in from her high-rise apartment, didn't pay rent, didn't do household chores, and was always bossing me around. They didn't immediately deny my words but exchanged glances and seemed contemplative, suggesting Candice might have led a lazy life at her parents' home too. I continued. It was hard to evict Candice right after losing my son, so I let her stay without saying anything. However, she contributed nothing to the household, did no chores, and even demanded that I leave. After finishing my story, Candice's parents were confused and distressed. After a moment of thought, Candice's parents repeatedly apologized to me. Indeed, it was their daughter's behavior, but Candice herself is an adult. Yet, causing such distress to her own parents is truly unpardonable. "We'll have a serious talk with our daughter," Candice's parents said. So, I decided to share important information with them. I can't say for certain, but I proceeded carefully with the conversation, knowing it would be shocking for Candice's parents. She claimed to be pregnant after Matt passed away, but that period actually coincided with when Matt was away on a long business trip. At first, Candice's parents were stunned and couldn't comprehend the situation, but their faces quickly turned pale. As for me, even if Candice is truly pregnant and betrayed Matt, he is no longer in this world, so I have no intention of involving myself with her any further. Therefore, I won't take any action, but I also won't provide any support, I declared firmly. Hearing this, Candice's parents were even more apologetic and said, "We're sorry for the trouble our daughter has caused. We promise not to bother you in the future." They pledged and left after paying for the coffee. Despite their promise of no further trouble, Candice ignored this and called me 6 months later. "Hey, I saw you on TV. I had no idea you were a famous leather artisan," she said, her previously rude demeanor gone as if we had always had a good relationship. However, I had no interest in engaging in a friendly conversation with her. Pretending not to recognize her, I asked, "Who is this?" "Oh, don't say that. It's me, Candice, your eldest son's wife. But mother, you're being a bit cold, aren't you? Our child, the product of our love, has been born, and you haven't even celebrated it. I'm still open to receiving gifts for the birth, you know," she blathered on. Her audacity was astonishing, to say the least. I couldn't help but smirk. "What are you talking about?" Isn't that child the offspring of your affair while Matt was still alive? Moreover, I heard the child resembles the foreign man you frequently meet and has blonde hair, I said. What? I've received several apologies from your parents. You probably came to extort money knowing I'm a renowned craftsman. Unfortunately, I have no money to give to strangers, I replied and hung up. I then called her parents to inform them about her financial demands. Candice's parents, who had been demanding she pay rent for staying at their home, were furious when she made financial demands on me. They told her, if you need money that badly, then earn it by working, and decided to have her live and work. It turns out that the man she had an affair with took the child and returned to his home country, abandoning Candice. I've heard that Candice now works every day while crying, but I hope this marks the end of her easy life and teaches her the hardships of living and the struggle to become independent through hard work.